episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Live from New York, it is Surviving the Survivor, the show that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime on trending criminal cases. Today, one of the most important days on the calendar, and that is because today is my son, Judah Mac's 6th birthday. And I'm not there. I was there for the birthday party. They're out at dinner right now. He's having a great time. And I promised him, by the way, he just made his soccer team. So I'm going to take him to get soccer cleats. But I miss the kid, and happy birthday to him. There is no bigger trial right now in the United States other than the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Don't even try to come at me, Karen readers, because it might be huge in Dedham, Mass, and in Canton and in your world, but you're not sitting next to reporters from Germany, the UK, Ireland, the way I was in court today. And this has the world's attention, and also culturally, a lot of other people's attention, whether they're music fans or entertainment fans, entrepreneurs, you name it. It was another really draining and a difficult day in federal court. I was telling Melba, it really truly is exhausting to sit in there and hear this testimony, because there is so much kind of pent up stress in that courtroom and in the federal courthouse as a result of this. Cassie Ventura today dropping some I hate using the word bombshells because it's a news cliche, but sometimes it is fitting. She talked today about Sean Diddy Combs dangling a woman off the 17th floor balcony of a building in Los Angeles who he was not pleased with. And literally, it's out of like the Goodfellas movie. He had her over the railing. What does this mean for this case? We're going to ask both attorneys. She also in sworn testimony said that when she was at a dinner to sort of break up and end things amicably with Sean Diddy Combs, she talked about how they had this beautiful dinner. He was being really sort of fun-loving and kind and sweet and gentle. And then he takes her home, and once they're inside, she talks about how he flips like a switch. And before she knew what was going on, she says that she was raped by Sean Combs. It happened very quickly. She was asked graphic questions, right afterwards. Where did he finish? She lets the government know that it was inside of her. Again, a collective gasp in the courtroom when that happened. And then at the very tail end of the day, she is asked by the government, not by the defense, but by the government, about a civil suit she filed against Sean Diddy Combs. She says it happened in 2023. She became friends with an attorney. She was going through trauma therapy and drug therapy after all the years of drug abuse and the trauma that she endured. And she was writing a book, and her mom was helping her with this. And she felt that Sean essentially needed to help her monetarily get this book out there and pay back in terms of emotional damages, some things. So they filed suit, and she said within 24 hours of filing the suit that Sean Combs settled for the amount of $20 million. We had heard it was an 8-figure sum before. We never knew the exact number. She revealed $20 million. Let me welcome in the best guest. One is not here at the moment. Neama Rahmani. He is a very high-powered, well-known, powerful LA-based attorney. He went to UCLA, graduated Harvard at the age of 22, Harvard Law after finishing UCLA. And he has led teams of over 100 attorneys at a time. Then you've got Melba Pearson, who is no offense to Neama, because Neama is too, but Melba is certainly an STS Nation fan favorite. She has called Miami home for 20 years, but she is originally from where I'm at right now, New York, and she teaches at FIU, Florida International University. And last but not least, and I'm really hoping she gets here because I have a ton of questions for her, is Dr. Lenore Walker, who literally wrote the book on the battered woman syndrome. She has done research on it and basically espoused the theory of battered woman syndrome and what it entails and what it means. So she is supposed to join, and hopefully Space Coast can get her to us when she is here. So I am just sorting out my my stuff here on this end. So Neama, let me start with you. Direct started yesterday. It essentially went for what they're calling a day and 3/4. They stopped today at about 4:20. There was talk, well, do we start the cross? Like most judges, Judge Arun Subramanian, who's presiding, he essentially said, let's start fresh in the morning. So that is what's going to happen. The defense already announced, hey, we are going to take at least the same amount of time on cross. Very, very difficult cross, and it's going to be done by Tenny Garagos, who's Mark Garagos' daughter. What should we expect tomorrow?
Joel, I think tomorrow is going to be the most important day in the trial, tomorrow and Thursday. This case is going to come down entirely to Cassie Ventura's cross-examination. And it's interesting, not just what will be asked, but who will be asking it. And Tenny is obviously very qualified, but it's not surprising that the defense has a young, less experienced attorney handle the cross-examination because it's a young female. I mean, the optics matter, and that's why she delivered the opening, and that's why the prosecution team, which is almost all female, had a female deliver the opening as well. So what's going to happen tomorrow? We're going to hear two broad areas of inquiry. The first is consent, and this was a theme during opening. Cassie did not leave. She enjoyed the lifestyle. She participated in the free cuffs to pleasure her partner. I don't agree with any of this. I'm a former prosecutor, current victims lawyer, but I'm telling everyone what to expect. It's going to be aggressive, and we'll see how Cassie...
How aggressive? When you say aggressive, what do you mean, and how aggressive?
I think it's going to be very aggressive because Tenny's going to be the one doing the cross. If it was like Nifala or one of the older men, the last thing you want is an overbearing old white dude, you know, crossing a woman who's 8.5 months pregnant, right? So, you know, now I think the gloves are going to be off because Diddy's life is at stake. Let's be honest. And I think the other area, which we'll get into, and I think the government tried to take the sting out of this a little bit today, is Cassie's own violent tendencies, right? Her punching Combs, her attacking that woman. They're going to argue that she was insanely jealous. Those are her own words, and that this was a mutually violent relationship. I think those are going to be the two big defense themes. Admit the violence, which they did, and they had to because of the hotel surveillance video. Try to draw a line between the sexual assault and say that didn't happen. That was consensual. So it's going to be fascinating to watch tomorrow. Really, I think the two biggest days of the trial.
And I would agree. And sometimes, you know, you save the star witness, I don't know, for maybe a bigger moment further down. But here, right out of the gates, and by the way, I'm no lawyer, obviously, but I cannot imagine. The judge said this could go till July 4th. I feel like this is going to end, you know, not next week or the week after, but I think this is probably more like 3 to 4 weeks. I cannot imagine, unless there is just a tranche of evidence that we are simply not aware of, that this could go as long as they say, which is 8 weeks. But Melba, and by the way, again, we're waiting for a psychologist, and if she doesn't come, Melba and Neama will become psychologists on this show. And I'm the child of a psychiatrist and a social worker, because there are a lot of things to discuss on the psychological side of things. But Melba, just pick up where Neama sort of bounced off, and that is this issue that did come up today. Cassie talked about a time at her mom's home in Connecticut where she's out at a bar and she's intoxicated, and she finds out from a friend that someone's been taking pictures of her, and now she's very paranoid, almost Sean Combs-esque, that these photos are going to get out. And so in court, she talks about how she grabs this woman and he yanks her out of the car. It's interesting because until I heard that story from her directly, I couldn't see it. Like, she comes across so demure and polite and soft-spoken and frankly kind of broken on the stand, that this did show a different side to her. And she talked about punching Sean Combs in the face when she would get upset with him, at least on a couple of occasions. So will the defense, will Teni Garagos go there? I think the answer is definitely yes. But is there going to be even a more 4D chess tactic of, I don't know, trying to get under her skin to see if they can show this side of her temper?
So first of all, hey, STS Nation, always great to be on with all of you. But yes, absolutely. If I was the defense attorney conducting the cross, I'd be looking for ways to needle her, get under her skin so that she could lash out. She can, give the jury that flash of anger that we all know she has, so that they can see that she's not this quote unquote sweet, innocent girl who is completely a victim. However, the key here is, number one, this could also backfire because she may be able to comport herself and stay very strong and stay very calm. Because again, as a prosecutor, if I was the prosecutor handling this case, I'd be like, listen, no matter what the woman says to you, you take a breath, you take a beat, and then you answer. You do not rise to that level or reduce yourself basically to that level where you're, being aggressive and fighting with her because you're going to lose the jury. So if she's been well prepared, she may be able to withstand that cross-examination without falling apart. But again, this is a very stressful situation. But I'll also, not being a psychologist, but being a prosecutor and being in the legal field for, over 2 decades, there is something to note in terms of her violence, because she was violent towards that woman or the young lady, because she was taking pictures or whatever the case may be. Keep in mind, she has not had any power in that relationship. I mean, let's be clear. Who had the money, who had the influence, and who also had the age? Because remember, there's a 17-year difference between Diddy and Cassie. So this may have been an incident, and I'm not excusing her behavior, but just talking about the psychology of it. This could have been an instance where she was trying to reclaim her power. So now she could take advantage of someone weaker than her and say, you're not going to violate me. You're not going to take pictures and share it with people the same way my boyfriend takes pictures and video, puts me in degrading situations, and I have to take it. So this is an instance where she's able to fight back and be like, no, you do not have my consent to take pictures, and I'm going to assert myself in that way. Doesn't make it okay, but it may explain where her mindset was at when she was in that incident. Because again, you do see this in domestic violence cases where the survivors will lash out. They will lash out at the prosecutor. I've been at the, tried DV cases. I've been on the receiving end of many a victim who, was extremely angry with me because of whatever tactic I was trying to take or whatever the case may be. So it's not unusual to see them lash out at other people other than their partner. And then you will see instances where they lash out at their partner. But again, at the end of the day, who is the one that's consistently holding the power? And who is the one that's consistently heaping on the abuse?
And that's a psychological angle as well, and that was no doubt Sean Diddy Combs. D love of God. This has to be unhealthy for Cassie's unborn child. There was a moment today that we hadn't seen yet, where Cassie interrupted the testimony and said, "Can I have a break?" And the judge said, "Of course." There've been a lot of times where you see her kind of like rubbing her pregnant belly. She's 8.5 months pregnant, and people have said, wow, I hope she does. I mean, she's at a point where she could literally go into labor. So I hope she is okay. Again, I saw her husband leaving court today. He is very upset looking. I don't know how else to describe it. I asked Sean Combs' mother. I posted this on Twitter at podcast STS and on Instagram, but so we saw Sean Combs' family come out again. I asked his mother, what does she feel towards Cassie Ventura? She looked at me and got into the awaiting van. What was interesting about that, Diddy is obviously a huge megastar. Inside the van, and I posted this on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor and Twitter at Podcast STS. He has a film crew inside the van shooting from the inside, capturing all this. And I'm thinking to myself, if my life is on the line, do I want this all recorded for posterity? It was a weird glimpse into the world of celebrity, that even during a trial, when the reality of your life is at stake, they've got a film crew. So that was just an observation. In terms of other observations, Cassie Ventura, she came out today. People are always interested. She was in a gray, full-length body, very snug dress that, fit her appropriately around the pregnant stomach. She had a black sweater on that was a full-length sweater, and I could tell, like, after just a moment or two, she was, I don't want to say flustered, but she was hot. There's all this attention on her, obviously, and she removed the sweater, and she appeared, for the most part, to be more comfortable today than she was yesterday. She seemed a little more at ease, having given the testimony yesterday. Diddy Combs was in his oatmeal outfit again, very similar looking grayish oatmeal pants and a Mr. Rogers sweater with a white long button down Oxford underneath. And he, again, is sort of just leaning back. I said this yesterday. It's almost like he's in the recording studio watching someone perform, assessing how the attorneys and the witness is doing. So Neama and Melba, one of the things that just keeps coming up literally on the hour amongst the journalists and the other people who are in the courtroom and the overflow room, the question, Neama, is, I don't get what the government is doing, because they're trafficking charges and these other charges, but there's not a domestic violence or a rape charge. There are none of these charges, and everything seems to point to domestic violence and the R word. So, Neama, can you break this down for us? I mean, I would assume that the government, especially the SDNY, they know what they're doing. What's happening right now?
Yeah, I think it's important to break down the elements. And Joel, I've gotten this question a lot from actually people inside the courtroom that aren't lawyers. So let's talk about the charges. I think everyone knows what prostitution is, right? And so I think that's established. Obviously, Combs is paying these male sex workers. There's an interstate component. Some of them are coming from other states. They're traveling across states. Even the use of money or, cell phones, that satisfies the federal jurisdictional hook. So let's set aside prostitution. I think that's really a throw-in charge anyway. This case is about sex trafficking and racketeering. Sex trafficking. What separates sex trafficking from consensual sex? Because we know adults can consent to sex no matter how freaky it is, right? Mm-hmm. Sex trafficking requires force, fraud, or coercion. So this isn't a case about fraud. This is a case about coercion and force. So what is coercion? Coercion is some of the testimony we heard over the past couple of days, giving Cassie Ventura a lot of drugs, so much so that she would throw up, forcing her to have sex on her period when she had UTIs. She had so many UTIs, regular antibiotics like Cipro wouldn't work on her, right? That's the coercion element. The force is the physical violence that we talked about. She felt compelled to perform at these freak-offs, right? Combs would beat her. Combs had guns. He would track her. He would control every aspect of her life, from her outfits to her nails to her breast implants to her piercings. Security would go after her if they couldn't find her. So you're trying to establish the coercion. You're trying to establish the force that makes normal sex trafficking. Now, is it better for the government?
Neama, I'm sorry. Let me just jump in, because I consider myself like a juror, the person that's kind of an average guy. Where does coercion intersect or dissect from the R word? What's the difference according to the law?
Well, the R word is sex without consent, right? So consent is a defense to both sexual assault and sex trafficking, right? So trafficking, of course, does have to have some sort of federal jurisdictional hook as well, right? We're in federal court, so not everything is a federal crime, So if you have your simple assault, right, it's not going to be a federal crime. It can be a RICO predicate act, which we'll talk about in a second, but this is the nature of federal law. Not everything gets into federal court, whether it's a civil case, whether it's a criminal case. There has to be some sort of federal component. And that's why it's not the R word, which is a state crime, but trafficking, which is a federal crime. And when you go to RICO as well, so what is racketeering, right? People think of the mob, cartels, street gangs, right? But racketeering requires a criminal enterprise. And that doesn't have to be, a rigid organization. It can be a loose association of two or more people. So that's Diddy and his entourage, right? You have people that are helping procure the sex workers, get the hotel rooms, set up the lights, the cameras, get the baby oil, whatever the case may be. That's enough. And we've seen, obviously, racketeering charged in other sex trafficking cases, right? Obviously, R. Kelly's the best example, but the NXIVM sex cult case. So once you have the criminal enterprise, you need two or more RICO predicate acts to establish that pattern of racketeering activity. So that's two of a set of enumerated crimes over a 10-year period. That's it. So assault, that can be a RICO predicate act. Bribery, we heard about that day one, extortion, sex trafficking, prostitution. So, they're trying to establish this criminal enterprise. And why are they charging RICO? RICO is a very powerful statute for the government because it brings a lot of people in and a lot of evidence. And it can be state crimes. It can be crimes that are outside the statute of limitations. All that evidence comes in. And really, I can tell you, Joel, the main reason the government is trying RICO is they're going to bring in members of Diddy's crew, his entourage. They're going to testify against them because guess what? If you got drugs for a freak off or you hired an escort for a freak off, you don't actually have to participate in the sex itself to be liable for the sex trafficking. That's the power of the RICO statute. So the government is going to lean on these people, make sure they flip, make sure they cooperate. So the reason the trial is going to go on, we've heard from Cassie, but we're going to hear from more of these sex workers like Philip who testified. We're going to potentially hear from a Christina Joram, who is Diddy's chief of staff and his right-hand woman. She knows where the bodies are buried. So the government is using the statute to lean on these people, and they're going to be the witnesses who are, in addition to the text messages and video, are going to corroborate the account of Cassie Ventura and the other victims here.
And until Neama just laid it out like that, I didn't understand it. And now I do. And now tomorrow, when someone asks me this question, which has been asked of me, I don't know why, every single time I walk in, I'm going to say, watch Surviving the Survivor from last night because I listened, but I could never repeat it. Rebecca here. Joel, I want to ask, can they get in for trafficking if they are sex workers? So, Melba, I want to come to you on this. The other thing that people are asking, they're saying, well, look, and by the way, today, a whole other list and slew of escorts were shown. And these escorts, apparently, I've never heard of the show. It's called Gigolos, but it's some reality show on, I think, HBO or Showtime that feature male escorts. And so some of these actual escorts are from this reality show, it turns out. But people are asking, Melba, what about the sex workers, the escorts? Because they were being flown around from Vegas to Miami to Ibiza to the Hamptons. What is, I guess, the implication legally for the fact that Sean Combs and his company were paying, according to Cassie's testimony, for these sex workers to cross state lines to participate in these freak-offs? Is this part of everything that Neama was just laying out?
Yeah, it absolutely is, because again, it's all about that transporting people for the purposes of illicit activity. And so while the sex workers may be going of their own volition, the undercurrent here is that, number one, Cassie was being forced to perform, or other people were being forced to perform. Other people were being sexually assaulted, as a result of this. We know we're going to hear from someone who was Diddy's assistant, who says that she was, sexually assaulted. So it's all all part of the broader story. And again, I mean, it's not just one thing or one party. It's a whole series of events that go towards the RICO. It's not just a one-off and oopsie, right? It's the fact that this was happening. Poor Cassie did not have any choice in the matter. She was being forced to do it. She knew that if she didn't comply, she was going to be brutally beaten. And she knew that he had guns. She knew that she could potentially be killed. So to for her own safety, she's complying. But again, she's being coerced to have intercourse with these people. So it's not exactly consensual. I mean, she's doing it because she's doing it under duress. I think that's probably a better way to think of it, that she's acting under duress because she's trying to save herself.
Yeah. Brenda Lee here with a good point. There was a lot of testimony today about blackmail. And again, we'll get the lawyer's legal take on that. We all know what it means, just from sort of a colloquial sense. But time and time again, Cassie was saying, well, Diddy would come to her and show her on her phone or his phone these freak off videos and say, I'm going to ruin you if you leave, if you go with Kid Cudi. Kid Cudi came up today as well. I just want to fill in some of the gaps as we're going here about today's testimony. So right out of the gates, and some of the things I don't fully understand, like why they established, but I think it's just obviously a holistic approach to get everything in. But they asked her about her aliases, and she announced that she goes by 3 aliases, typically Jackie Star, Veronica Bang, and Anita Crawford. Those are Cassie's 3 aliases. And then they go right into this issue of a time when Sean Combs was beefing with Suge Knight, and him and his bodyguards strap weapons to their bodies, and they go out, and she says to herself, essentially, what the hell is going on? Why are these guys getting guns and going? This obviously plays to some sort of criminal element or criminal enterprise. One of the things that Sean Combs also did, according to Cassie Ventura, and by the way, I'm looking at my spiral notebook since electronics are not allowed in court, that Sean Combs would make it a point to ask her to make sure and find out that these escorts are not police officers. So, Neama, I know you only have a few minutes left with us. I don't know if there's some sort of legal repercussion here in terms of the charges and the fact that they're strapping guns to themselves and going after Suge Knight. And we heard about this car attack on Kid Cudi where they blew up his car because Sean Diddy was so mad that he started dating her. If you care to comment on any of that. But the other question I want to ask you more broadly is, there is a missing witness still. We don't really know what's going on. And there's only 2 other sort of direct witnesses in terms of direct relation to being manipulated this way from Sean Combs. So question number 1, let's just talk about the guns. And question number 2, what about this missing witness?
Yeah, the guns are part and parcel of the coercion and the force, right? So we talked about the blackmail. Diddy called them the skeletons on the iPad, right? I mean, Cassie knew exactly what that meant, and she was terrified that he would release the videos and this would ruin her and embarrass her. Let's not forget she wanted to be an artist and to have a career and have a family. So that's, and obviously all the guns, right? We saw them when they were seized, when there were as Los Angeles and Miami homes were raided in March of last year. A lot of guns, a lot of them without serial numbers, right? So, we heard about Suge Knight. I'm still waiting to see, what Diddy's involvement in the murder of Tupac was. Hopefully, we'll get something out of this case. Obviously the Kid Cudi, car being blown up, all important stuff. And then to answer your next question, Joel, I'm sorry, what was your next question?
The next one, that's a great question because I just had it in front of me, was the missing witness. So
the missing witness,
3.
Yes, V3, yeah, very important. This was always my concern in the case because Diddy has almost unlimited money. He could pay off one of these witnesses and they would go sideways, right? Mm-hmm. The second is that he would intimidate them. Now, obviously, if you're the government, you don't want to call 100 victims. And the last thing you want to do is to call 100 civil plaintiffs who have filed lawsuits and may have a financial motive in the case. You really want to take your best witnesses. I always thought, whether it's a Weinstein or a Cosby, if you have a lot of victims, really 5 or 6 tends to be the sweet spot. But 5 or 6 victims who are vetted, who are going to show, who aren't going to go sideways, who aren't going to get cold feet. And at least as of last week, the government's saying, I can't get a hold of victim 3 or their lawyer. I mean, that's a problem in the case. And really, it's kind of too late. We'll see if they can kind of bring some rebuttal witnesses or a 404B, we call them prior bad acts witnesses, to fill in the gap. But what you want to do is overwhelm the defense with the sheer number of victims telling the exact same story of physical or sexual violence, because jurors might not believe one victim who may have an axe to grind, may want money or fame or revenge, but a victim after victim is there on that witness stand telling the same story. That's usually too much for the defense to overcome.
Yeah, and by the way, you are looking at our third guest, Lenore Walker, Dr. Lenore Walker, who I'm going to come to in a moment. Lenore, give me a thumbs up if you hear me. I just have you muted. Let me just check here. Lenore, are you hearing me? You have to unmute, Lenore. You have to unmute.
Well, it says
There
you muted
You're good.
me.
No, you're good. You're unmute again, Lenore. Apologies for the technical difficulties. One more time, Lenore. There you go. Can you hear me, Lenore?
Which one?
It's
have-
not great.
I'm going to have Space Coast figure that out. Steve Cohen, maybe you can have Lenore just hop onto her phone and we'll come back to her in a minute. But she literally wrote the book on battered woman syndrome or battered spouse syndrome, because it does go both ways. But Neama, to you, I'll make this your final question since I know you have to run. 2 things. Number one, the lawsuit. It was revealed that she was paid $20 million from Sean Diddy Combs, and it was paid to her within 24 hours, which would have been a nice little job for you, Neama, since you do that sort of thing. Does this hurt her credibility? I'm sure the cross, they're going to ask her about that, and they're going to say, well, weren't you just in this for the money? What have you done with this $20 million? How did they handle that? How does the government handle this?
Yeah, Joel, I have very strong feelings about this lawsuit. So let's talk about it. First, I agree it hurts her credibility because now she has a potential financial motive to raise these allegations. I like what the government did. You want to front these types of bad facts for the jurors. You don't want it to first come out during cross. But let's take a step back. And this is what I want people who are watching to know. New York State opened up the civil statute of limitations to file these claims. Cassie knew it. Diddy and his lawyers certainly knew it. Cassie was up against the wall. If she didn't file this lawsuit, she would lose the opportunity to do so forever. The parties were reportedly in negotiations, and reportedly, Cassie's asking for somewhere between 20 and 30 million. Combs reportedly only wants to pay her 10 million. Again, I don't know if all this is true, but if it was true, and if Combs, to try to save $10 million when he's reportedly worth $1 billion, we're talking about 1% of his net worth, for someone he physically and sexually abused for more than a decade. If he was that cheap, causing her to file a lawsuit, which he settled the very next day, if he just paid her that extra $10 million, Joel, Mel, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation today. Of course, Cassie files a lawsuit. The allegations are public. Everyone piles on. The criminal investigation starts. So, Diddy, you're cheap. You should have paid your ex. And you might not even be sitting here today. Those are my thoughts on the Cassie Ventura lawsuit.
That's amazing. And that just reminds me so much of our original case in a weird way, which is Dan Markel and the Adelsons. Donna Adelson tried to flee by buying a one-way ticket to Vietnam, and she had the wherewithal and the cash to buy 10 round-trip tickets in first class, but she didn't do it, and now that's going to show consciousness of guilt. I don't know if being cheap is a vice, but you heard Neama say it's going to come back to bite Diddy in the behind, potentially. Fred here, don't know you, Fred, but I do love you because you just gave us a very generous super sticker, and I appreciate the kind words. So thank you very much Very much appreciated. Neama, finally, before you go, how does this all end? Does it go all the way to July 4th? And does it end with a conviction?
I think we will get well into June because I believe there are going to be witnesses that those employees, independent witnesses, the government's going to need them. I do think Judge Subramanian is moving things along quicker than we thought. So maybe not all the way to the 4th of July. I do think it ends in a conviction. Maybe it's the former prosecutor, me, current victim's lawyer. That's what I think. Hopefully Cassie and the other victims do get justice. But Diddy has an all-star defense team. Really, money is no object. I estimated that he's probably spending upwards of $100,000 a day just in legal fees, and it's probably going to be $10 million or more when it's all said and done. Again, that $10 million could have gone to your ex-girlfriend of a decade.
Very interesting. Great point. Neama is super insightful. Great guy. Go get your kids, and appreciate you being here, Neama.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Mel. Hope to be on soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Now, Melba, bear with me for one moment. I'm going to try to bring in Lenore here. Lenore, do we have you? This is like having Carm on this show. Dr. Walker? Dr. Walker, if you can hear me, try to get on your cell phone. All right. So it's me and you, Melba, at least for right now. Steve Cohen is working on this. Just to sort of tack on to what Neama was just saying, this lawsuit, when people heard $20 million, most people don't see that in 10 lifetimes. And this was definitely a kind of a cross section of America in the courthouse today and the overflow room. So when they heard $20 million, whoa, that's a lot of money. Is it going to impact these jurors? And here's a question from Carrie. Can the prosecution bring it up that she was up against the clock to file this lawsuit or not be able to at all? Are they going to be allowed to reveal this?
So yes and no. I would say, number one, in terms of the $20 million, I think it may impact her credibility slightly. But at the end of the day, she also could have taken the $20 million and run. She didn't have to come to court and testify. She didn't have to sit there with her 8.5-month pregnant belly, putting all that stress on her body, on her child, on her family, having her partner sit there and listen to the most degrading things ever, some of which maybe he hasn't heard. I mean, we can't assume that he knows every single intimate detail. So, there's definitely a case to be made that she would have taken that $20 million and not been heard from again, as we're possibly seeing with, one of the survivors who now no one's able to get in touch with. So the fact that she was there, I think kind of might help mitigate that somewhat. But in terms of whether or not she was against the clock and that coming out, I think it's all going to depend on how it comes out in cross-examination. Because if the defense goes really hard in terms of her credibility and like, this is about money and this is the only reason why you're here, et cetera, the prosecution can come back on redirect examination and kind of clean that up and be like, why did you file suit at that time? Did you, kind of talk us through your psychology? And that's where she can talk about, hey, listen, the door was closing on this. I thought the statute of limitations run. I didn't think I'd have a chance to be able to file this. And suddenly I was told that this was an option and that's the only reason why I pursued it, or something along those lines. But I think giving that explanation in response to the defense's cross-examination will be the way for that to come in. I don't think there was really a pathway for that to come out on direct examination. But I did think the prosecution made a great, strategic move by having her talk about the $20 million, because if that came out on cross, it would have decimated her credibility. But by bringing it up on direct examination and getting it out there, it takes a little bit of the wind out of the defensive sails on that narrow issue alone.
And Melba, what about the other issue that I asked Neama about, which is her occasionally hitting Sean Combs and then attacking this woman who was taking pictures of her? What does that do to her credibility with the jurors? And I gotta say two things. Number one, if Diddy had to give her all her money for what he put her through, it's not enough. And, I don't blame her for retaliating against Sean Combs, but I think maybe with this woman that, I don't know what the optics are for the jury. Are you concerned about that?
I would be concerned about it, but at the same token, it was brought out in direct examination, which means you have ample opportunity to try to cure it, to get the sting out of it. And so again, she was able to say in her own words, like, yes, I did this. You know, she didn't shy away from it. But if that's one instance in 10 years, and she's been brutalized for 10 years, I mean, in the scheme of things, I don't know how heavily that would weigh in the jury's mind. Now, in terms of her hitting Diddy, again, if she's talking about literally she had to go to a plastic surgeon after he smashed her head into I believe it was a headboard or something like that, and she got stitches and then had to have plastic surgery to be able to be presentable. How she was going to movie premieres with a fat lip and black eyes and had to put on a ton of makeup and had to switch her entire outfit because she had so many bruises. Like, okay, she gets 1 or 2 licks in on him. In comparison to what he did to her for 10 years, it's a drop in the bucket. So again, in the totality of the circumstances, it is something to be concerned about, but I don't think it's detrimental to the case.
100%. I agree with you. And the government made it a point to ask the question, when you struck him, did he ever have any marks? Was he hurt visibly? The answer was no. He didn't even have a scratch on him. When she was hit, she required stitches, plastic surgery at one point to repair that cut that you were just talking about. He wouldn't let her go to a hospital, so he brought her to his quote-unquote plastic surgeon. By the way, just listening to their lifestyle, I'm like, who wants to be a celebrity, man? It might be a lot of money, but it ain't. It sounds like it ain't too fun. Like, it is just nonstop toxicity and craziness. But I'm going to try to get Lenore back. I'm going to go check on her in a minute. Lenore, if you can hear me, look up at me. And that's a no. So she can't. Lenore, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can. I'm looking at her. I know you guys aren't. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up, Lenore. Oh, perfect. She can hear me. Let me see if Lenore, do we have you? Talk to me, Lenore.
I don't think you have me.
No, I have you. I do
me?
have you. I have you. I do have you.
Oh, okay. All
You're
of a
good.
sudden.
Look at this is like Lenore, don't take this the wrong way. This is like having my mother on this show. It's just as good. I love it. So Dr. Walker.
I just lost you.
Oh boy. All right. We're gonna have to Lenore, try to go on your cell phone. Try to get on your cell phone. And if not, Carm will call you and she'll guide you through it another day. But we're gonna Melba, you and I are gonna run the show and take it by the reins here. There's a question here. What did you think Diddy's kids think of him? The older sons obviously are aware of what a POS he is. I don't need to tell you what that means. So Melba, there was a point in the testimony today where, and again, it was just, I don't want to say shocking or stunning because I think we expect it after a day and a half of testimony. But after he beats the crap out of her, forgive my English, he tells her that he doesn't want his own children to see her this way. Can she please cover up? Can she please put on makeup? What are your thoughts about that? Just from not as a lawyer, as a human being?
That's just absolutely diabolical. And again, that's part of that whole psyche that I know Dr. Lenora could speak so eloquently about, but it's part of that whole psyche of abuse and that control where he had complete control over her appearance. And even though he disfigured her, he still was in control of her appearance. So even though she had bruises and everything else, he's now dictating, you need to cover that up. You need to be presentable. And again, laying the blame at her, like, this is your fault. You need to do something about this. And I can't expose my children to what you look like. So it's just a continuing messing with her mind and continuing to break down her self-esteem so that, again, she feels like nobody else will want me. Nobody's going to support me. Nobody's going to protect me. I have to stay in this horrible abusive situation.
Yeah. Well, now look at this. Steve Cohen working the magic behind the scenes. Dr. Lisa Fontes was with us the other night, and she wrote the second ever book about coercive control. Welcome back, Dr. Fontes. I appreciate you being here. Let everybody know the title of the book again.
Sure. Invisible Chains, overcoming coercive control in your intimate relationship. I'm very happy to be here again.
Yeah, love having you. And meet Melba Pearson, who is a law professor at Florida International University and also a wonderful person and a lawyer in her own right. So let me dig in on this a little bit with you now, Dr. Fontes, and we'll go back and forth between the law and this. Just today, we find out during testimony, and this was arguably the most powerful moment in the day. The government is asking her, and she informs the jurors that she was trying to break up with Sean Combs. And so she decided to go have a quote unquote final dinner at a restaurant, public restaurant. And they're talking, and she says he's being jovial and amiable and sort of kidding around like the light Diddy. And then he takes her home and goes into her place in LA. And before she knows what's going on, she says the eyes turned black. That's how she describes it. And she was raped by him. I was speechless. People in the courtroom, it was a collective, gasp. Is this guy just totally incapable of controlling himself? And is this all an issue of him having to be in complete control? So now she's saying goodbye, and he's like, no. And she lets everyone know that he finished his business inside of her, which is obviously very personal. What is happening here?
Okay. So it's certainly not the case that he can't control himself. He controlled himself very well. In fact, this was a real calculated, these are calculated steps on his part to get her alone, to isolate her. He was performing kindness. He was performing lovingness. He was grooming her through that dinner to trust him enough to allow him to bring her back to her home. And then once inside, he did what he does, which is to take advantage of her vulnerability. And so he was perfectly in control that whole time. I can't diagnose him, but I certainly can describe his behavior based on what you said today, based on what Ms. Ventura said today. And it was all calculated. And when she says that she saw the light side of him, that's the side she fell in love with. That's the side that he uses to shape her. So if you think of him as having him like other domestic abusers, having a toolbox, and he takes out the tool that he needs most at any moment to control her. At one moment, it's the fist. Another moment, it's drugs. Another moment, it's insults. And another time, it's going to be a romantic dinner. Whatever it takes. Promises of a record contracts. Whatever it takes to control her, he's going to use the tools. And so we've seen Ms. Ventura describe a variety of tools that he has used to control her.
Yeah, very well said. There was a question, Melba, just now. Dr. Walker, do you have us now? Do you hear me?
I do. I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. And for those who don't know, including our guest, Dr. Lenore Walker wrote the book, The Battered Woman Syndrome. And you see Dr. Fontes shaking her head because she knows about it. Dr. Lenore Walker, you're joining us, and we're hearing in court today that she was raped by Sean Combs as she was trying to break up with him. She did not even know, she said, what was really going on, and she tried to get him off of her. She could not. Is this, I don't know, typical or atypical of these sexual predators and this kind of mindset that Sean Combs has?
Absolutely typical. This, and the time when it's the most dangerous for these women is a time when they want to break up. And that's part of what keeps them in the relationship. It sounds crazy, but it's safer for many of these women to stay in the relationship with these guys than it is for them to leave. They're most likely to get more seriously hurt or killed at that point. And this is his typical behavior.
The 18-month period, if I may say so, the 18-month period after breakup is statistically the most dangerous for a woman who's involved with a domestic abuser. And this sexual assault after the breaking up is also not unusual. It's a question of ownership. Right. And we've seen that Mr. Combs has not wanted to let her go. He chased her down when she did get away. He apparently caused people she was seeing or maybe even just flirting with to be beaten up. So he doesn't want her to get out of his grasp. And that's one example of it.
By the way, we might have the two best guests on coercive control in this battered woman syndrome. All of a sudden, I didn't think we were going to have any, and now we've got two of the best. So stick around, and we're gonna dig into it, because I have a lot of questions on the psychology side, and you can't see it, but I was panicking because I'm like, oh, I have all these questions for a psychologist, and I can't even call my dear mother because she's 8 hours ahead. But Melba, back to you for a minute. There was just a question. Is there any chance in hell that Sean Combs takes the stand to say, hey, she beat me up too? Hey, it was just a money grab. Is there any chance? And these are some of the best lawyers, Mark Agnafilo, Brian Steele. They're not going to let him get up there, are they?
Absolutely not. Now, one thing to be very clear, the decision to testify is always lies with the defendant. So the attorney can say, dude, sit down, hold your position, don't move. But if he's like, my ego says I want to get up because I can tell a better story, or because of the fact that he's been able to manipulate and convince people so many times over his career, he thinks I can pull one over on the jury, he can still get up there and testify. So no matter what advice his attorneys give him, he can decide to do something totally different with it. However, for the amount of money he's paying, I would think that he's going to listen to his counsel. And also, realistically, what is he going to get up there and say? Because maybe he can say, well, everything with Cassie was consensual. And then maybe he could say, well, the assistant, she was mad because I fired her. But how does he get around the testimony from the sex workers? How does he get around, the video evidence? How does he get around that horrible video from the Intercontinental Hotel where it was there on camera, there for everyone to see, him brutalizing Cassie? There's nowhere for him to go. So I think less money, my money is he's going to keep his mouth shut and not take the stand.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't want to say that he's enjoying this, because I definitely don't think he is, but he's, again, watching it almost like I would picture a music producer sitting in his studio, thinking about the way he wants to create things. Big girl for life here. Melba, one more for you, and then I'm going to go a little bit heavy on the psychological stuff happening, but can the prosecution do a redirect here after this, what is expected to be at least a day and a half, if not more, cross that's coming up tomorrow morning?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the prosecution can do a redirect covering anything that was mentioned in the cross-examination. They can't get up and mention other things or go down some other path, but they can basically rehabilitate Cassie in terms of if she messed up in anything on cross-examination, maybe got a timeline wrong, but also to add more context to different things that end up being brought out on cross-examination. I would anticipate that the redirect may take a few hours, won't be as long as the direct examination. We saw the direct examination was 2 days. I would say a couple hours in terms of a redirect, maybe a little less, because again, it depends on how the flow of cross-examination goes and if there are things that are really damaging that came out as a result of the cross-examination.
Yeah, this next question is from Melba, but it's going to be for Dr. Fontes, and then I have one for Dr. Walker right after. So, Dr. Fontes, how important is it for the prosecution to bring an expert well-versed in coercive control and the cycle of abuse? I assume we're going to see someone like this, and you do this. You do this as part of your job. You testify as an expert witness. Walk us through this. I mean, in a case like this, what would you want to get across on the witness stand? What is most important to get across?
Okay, so let me first separate out two things that you mentioned that are so important. One is coercive control, which would explain why Ms. Ventura wasn't simply free to walk out the door, which is a question that a lot of jurors may have and a lot of viewers may have. Why didn't she just leave? Although we know she tried to just leave, but why did she stay? Why did she please and appease him? Why did she engage in these acts which she said sickened her, which disgusted her, which made her feel humiliated over time? Why did she do that? And coercive control is the answer to that. But you also mentioned the cycle of abuse. And I'd like to say that people aren't really using that term anymore. We don't really think in that way anymore. You know, the cycle of the abuse was the idea that first there was a violent incident, and then there was a honeymoon, and then a build up to another violent incident. But that's not how victims think about what happened to them. They don't talk about a honeymoon. There was a period maybe without a violent incident where they managed to work so hard to appease their abuser that there was no violent incident. But it wasn't like, or maybe they were given flowers and chocolates so they would stay. But that's a tactic. It wasn't a honeymoon. So I speak more about coercive control. And what would an expert need to do here? An expert would need to address what the effects are of these different techniques that Mr. Combs used against Ms. Ventura and the other people who allegedly have been victimized here, the effects of the threats, the physical violence, the deliberate drugging, the constant sex, the predatory sex, the promises of contracts, the promises of fame and fortune, the quickness to anger, kind of the arbitrary anger that we've heard about, that people felt that he was all powerful. Dan Phillip talked about feeling like Mr. Combs was all powerful and could get him anywhere. So they felt like he was omnipresent and omnipotent, and that creates a great feeling of fear. So they'd want an expert to talk about the interior life of the people who were at these forced sex events, the interior life of Ms. Ventura, the behavioral pattern that you see in Mr. Combs. I mean, just like that puzzling thing of, he seemed fine in that goodbye dinner, took Ms. Ventura home and allegedly raped her. What is that about? And how common is that? Unfortunately, it's very common. So there's a lot that I think an expert could say, which would help the juror understand situations that they've never been in. But they've been afraid. Like all of us have been afraid. So if we took the moments that we've been afraid and we rolled them all up and multiplied them by a dozen years, maybe we would begin to understand what Ms. Ventura has been through.
Yeah, it's, I'll tell you, being there, it's hard to process it. I mean, people are reading about it, but to hear it coming out of her mouth, it is daunting. And Black Widow comes to us from the Republic of Ireland. I'm amazed she's alive, to be honest. And I have to tell you, when I was listening to this testimony, Melba has to leave. Oh boy, I'm going to lose the lawyer. Melba, we love you. I will let you go. We're going to pivot into
real
a psychological
love, not this weirdness, real love.
But yeah, Melba, real quick before you go, is this going to end in a conviction, do you think?
I think so. Now, will it be all 5 charges or all 5 counts? Not necessarily, but I do think he will at least probably be convicted on the sex trafficking and the prostitution charges. But
and
again, those carry
how long
life.
will he? Yeah, I was going to say, how long does he go away for with that? The rest
They
of his
carry
life?
and he's about 55, 56 years old and not used to rough living. So yeah, even 20 years is a life sentence for him.
By the way, he looks 30 years older, mainly because of the grays. That's why my mom yells at me to shave, but I refuse. So Melba, you're the best. I'll be in touch once I'm back in Miami. Thank you. And now we pivot over to the psychological angle. I'm going to continue to fill in some of the gaps of the testimony just to get everyone caught up. So right away, at the beginning of the day today, they played the video again, the Cassie Ventura video where she is beaten up in the hallway of the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City. And they go kind of frame by frame. Dr. Lenore Walker, let me just stop there. Is she lucky to be alive? Let's start at that question.
Absolutely. She's absolutely alive. The abuse that she experienced was awful. I think a lot of it she experienced while she was on drugs. And unfortunately, that may be what helped save her because she may not have felt it quite as badly as it actually was during that period of time. I also want to say something to Lisa. We are indeed using the cycle of abuse when we do treatment with battered women, because if we can show them that they are being manipulated, that they are getting rewards they want after the abuse, that helps break that continuous hold of coercive control that batterers have over them. So it's not necessarily outdated quite yet, as we are working on good treatment programs for women who have been abused. And unfortunately, not everybody gets a trained therapist in who knows how to work with battered women and sex trafficking victims, which is quite an interesting combination in this particular case.
Yeah. Dr. Walker, real quick, what about Sean Combs' mother? Someone just raised that point that she's in denial. Do you find that most of these perpetrators, that the mothers and or the fathers, but particularly the mothers, sort of deny the son's behavior if they're acting out?
Well, it depends, but many of them do. Many of the mothers, they themselves have been abused. And so they feel like they were able to take it and accept it. And I have to say, it's not about wanting to be abused. It's about the rewards that people get for staying in the relationship. Women are smart enough, if they're not getting anything out of it, they really try to leave. And you can see that when Cassie was no longer getting what she thought she was going to get out of it, she did try to leave. By then, it's too late. We have to teach them how to leave much sooner than that period. But the mother of these men are usually become the best friend to these women. They're the ones who will very often be very kind and good to them until they're ready to leave. And at that point, they may turn against her.
Yeah. This, by the way, what we're looking at in the comment from Little Biddle, have you mentioned Diddy making a heart sign with his hands today? It's been happening every day. He's got his family in the second row behind him. And this guy's a performer. He's a celebrity. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I again, they have a video crew shooting the family coming out of court, and inside the van that's shuttling the family around to wherever they're going after court. I think for any normal, quote unquote, normal person, documenting this with a film crew would be the last thing on our mind. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So, Dr. Fontes, to you, they keep showing this video, which we expected. They go kind of frame by frame once again today. At one point, Cassie Ventura says, Sean grabs my phone, and then I see this vase full of flowers flying in my direction. She says, I remember it was coming towards me, but I put my arm up to protect me. And she goes through the whole video, what happened in that video. She went through it yesterday. She goes through it again today. But this, Dr. Fontes, is the part that made me want to rip my hair out. He then messages her a short time later and says, this is now Sean Combs texting Cassie Ventura after he beats her up and says, you can't leave me here at the hotel. She took off to her apartment, and he just texts her repeatedly saying, you got to call me, please call. She talked about how sort of OCD he was. Text me, call me. And then he says, I got 6 kids, please call. And then after that, he says, the police are here. The police were never there. There was never a police report written. What is happening here with Diddy? I mean, he's losing control because she leaves. She's gone. And suddenly, you're leaving me? And I have 6 kids? And you're doing this to me? And the police are here, even though they weren't? This is manipulation beyond any pale that I've ever heard about.
It is absolutely intense manipulation. very calculated. Again, we see he's not only telling her something which is true, which is that he has 6 kids, which you could say is not really her problem, but he's also telling her things that are not true to manipulate her, like that the police are there. So absolutely intense manipulation. And I think it's also very probable that the loss of her, the prospect of the loss of her feels unbearable to him. And that's part of what makes him so dangerous, because there are men especially, who would kill their partners rather than allow them to leave. Yeah. That is the kind of attachment, the kind of hold that they have. And so he rather than, he doesn't ever turn the mirror on himself. He doesn't look at himself and say, I'm sorry, I got out of control. I'm sorry what I did to you, which certainly could have been another way of writing her, right? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't examine himself and his problems. He examines her and feels sorry for himself. That is the level of his narcissism, that he's the only person he's caring about. He's being left with 6 kids.
Yeah, maybe it should be illegal to be a celebrity, because I feel like every single one of them is a mess. Dr. Walker, to you. So we just heard what Sean Combs texts and says, how could you leave me here? But she responds to him now, and she says he's walking around in a towel, and she's worried about him after being beaten up, and tells him in a text message, put on a robe. She says, I went and checked. She's comforting him. She says to him, I went and checked. The police aren't coming. Don't disturb anyone, and they'll let you be. So she's now comforting him after he beats her up and after he guilts her with these text messages. I didn't know what to make of that, because I'm not saying Cassie's not a strong woman, but my wife is an exceptionally strong woman. My mother is a Holocaust survivor. And if this was, I don't know for certain, but I believe if my father tried to pull this on my mother would have basically kicked my dad's ass while he was still alive. But what is going on here with Cassie Ventura? Why respond? And she keeps saying that she was in love with him. Is that why?
Well, she's got to keep him calm. That's part of her behavior. He's trained her to keep him calm. His needs come first. Nobody else counts. Even his 6 kids don't count, unfortunately. But she cared about kids. And so he's using them as another manipulative tool. And so she doesn't want anybody to get hurt. And she knows if she can calm him down, it'll pass. And that's the stage they're in at that point.
Can I introduce another word here, Joel?
Yes,
the word is fawning. So fawning is what someone does when they turn to the source of danger for comfort from that danger. And she knows that Mr. Combs is the source of danger for her. So as Lenore Walker says, you got to keep him calm. And it also makes her feel better to know that he's okay. So she's fawning, she's pleasing and appeasing. It's, some people used to call it the Stockholm syndrome, when people are getting close to their captors. She's been trapped with him in this very traumatic situation. And she tries to get out, but she also tries to keep it as safe as possible.
Yeah, and Dr. Fontes, this question from Chicago Marie is interesting. Why Cassie? Why don't you think Diddy had why do you think he had a fascination with her over a decade of abuse? Why didn't he just leave her be and leave her alone? He no doubt could have had anyone. It's interesting the way people think, because I think very similarly. Everyone says, oh, you're famous, you could have everyone. And I say to myself, oh, you're at the Cannes Film Festival, life must be great. But we found out today that she was beaten in France. And the night that they're taking photos on the red carpet, she's actually bruised. It's covered up with makeup. So all that glitters is definitely not gold. She was suffering on the red carpet, and you see this celebrity and you're like, wow, what a beautiful, fun, crazy, wild life. But it turns out it's almost
Yeah.
a deadly existence for her. But to this point, Dr. Fontes, why Cassie? Why was he so fixated on her?
I can't say why he was so fixated on her, but I think we can presume that he didn't have a lot of really good social skills, to put it mildly. I mean, I've looked and looked. You can hardly find a picture of him smiling ever. This picture of Mr. Combs sitting in the corner, playing with himself, masturbating while he's orchestrating this this forced sex event in front of him week after week. I mean, that's not exactly a happy picture. So it didn't seem like he actually wanted to have interactive sex with people. Although there are reports of him having sex with Ms. Ventura and male escorts as well, and other women as well. But most of the time, it seemed like really what he preferred to do was run the show and please himself in a corner. I don't know what his obsession with Ms. Ventura was, but it's also not that uncommon that, you know, an abuser gets used to their victim. They've groomed their victim, and they like them. And so he had all those other women too, to the extent that they were also, he had a lot of women in the room, right? He was orchestrating sex acts with. So it wasn't like he just had Cassie, but it sounds from what you said, like she was helpful with the kids too.
Yeah. By the way, Martina is right about this. She's beautiful, almost childlike, innocent looking. She is. She's stunningly beautiful, but she comes across just very innocent. That's why the part about her grabbing this woman out of a car was a little tough for me to even visualize, because she just comes across as, I said this yesterday, kind of naive and innocent. And at one point today, Dr. Walker, she's sort of in the middle. This has happened a few times, but she's sort of in the middle of giving this testimony. And she you can almost see her thinking about the past. And she stops at one point, and it's a rhetorical question and a comment. She says something along the lines of, "I feel so trapped. How did this happen to me?" She says this in court. What would you say to her? What would your answer to her be?
Well, I think she in some ways knows how she was. She was afraid of him, afraid of being blackmailed, afraid of her career being derailed. I mean, he instilled this kind of fear in her that traps her. All of us know, I think Dr. Fontes said, all of us know what it's like to be afraid. And so that traps us into behaving in ways that we might not behave at other times. And he was really good at it. I know we're concentrating a lot on the negative things that happen, but that's not what keeps the woman trapped as well. It's also the positive things they get. He was able to measure out just enough of positive things for her that kept her there. And so that's part of what trapped her. And she has to deal with herself for, why did that feel so good for her? And are there other ways to get what you want in a relationship? And I think he took away a lot of free will by his manipulative behavior. He was a master at it. And he could offer a lot of things that she wanted, including money, fame, success. Who else wants to be on a yacht outside the Cannes Festival? It's not the beating up that kept her there. It's also the fact that she was then able to walk out on a red carpet and to have some of those things. Without it, Mr. Combs would not have had that kind of power. And unfortunately, the money of these celebrities throw around to the women do keep them there.
Yeah, Dr. Fontes, I just want to circle back, and I have a bunch more questions, which we'll do sort of in a rapid fire succession. But just this came up multiple times today, so I just want to make sure we put a bow on it. Essentially, she said, as one example, on the way back from the Cannes Film Festival, by the way, he beats her up. He throws her off the yacht. He beats her up. And then what does he ask? He asks for a freak off, which she, ends up participating in again before leaving. And then on the flight home, he starts to scroll through video, Dr. Fontes, showing her the freak off video saying, I can ruin your life. So she's now essentially being blackmailed. And then when they land after this transatlantic flight, he says, let's have another freak off. And she's like, I can't do it. And he's like, let's go to dinner. And then she gets into another freak off. What's going on here, though, with the showing of the video to her repeatedly from Sean Combs? Is that just basically the lock and key saying, look, if you do anything, this is my security and I will ruin you?
It's certainly that. I mean, it's certainly a threat, as you say, and it's another effort to control her and manipulate her. It's another effort to humiliate her, to show her this is all you are. You are this glistening piece of meat who I'm having men use in any way I want. The most humiliating kinds of sex with strangers. On Mr. Combs' demand. So by showing them to her, he's saying, I've got this on you to blackmail you, but he's also saying, this is all you are and you're mine. And then he's making that demand. So she doesn't have time to plan getting away. She's trying to survive to the next day. Between the drugs and the sex, keeping her up all night, sometimes multiple days, that much sexual activity, it's painful. She had to take drugs to get through it. She said she was often sick from the drugs and would take days to recover. And as soon as she'd be recovering, he'd want to do another one of these forced sex events. I'm not going to call them freak-offs. I find that's kind of like an edgy, jazzy word. Yeah. And that's Mr. Combs' word, and I'm not going to use it. But these forced sex events.
Yeah, and I love that. And I love that you brought that up on the show. Dr. Walker, if you want to add, Dr. Fontes did say that language matters, and that is his phrase, freak offs, but this is really torture is what it is. That's what it amounts to.
I absolutely agree. I think one of the things that we haven't talked about is what is the role of so much sex for people like Mr. Combs. We know that kind of repeated masturbation is often a way that abusers use to reduce their own anxiety. That's the same thing with the compulsive behavior that he engages in, the repeated phone calls, the repeated demands again and again and again, is a way of trying to calm himself down. And of course, the drugs enter into it as well.
This is a great question, not the one I was going to ask, but it just popped up. Dr. Fontes, and I have a bunch more. Is this type of behavior ever satisfied? And I think the answer is probably no. If I'm right, no. Why not, Dr. Fontes?
Well, I think it's exactly what Dr. Walker says, that the behavior is rooted in anxiety. It's rooted in insecurity. This is not a secure man. The man who needs to do this is not a secure man who's confident in his masculinity. This is someone who needs to prove constantly that he's got the power, that he's got the wealth, and that he can make other people do what he wants. And I haven't met him, so I can't really talk about what's going on inside him, but it appears that he could use a lot of really good therapy because people can chase their addictions forever. That craving will not be filled.
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad was a psychiatrist, and he said that I know this is going to be hard to believe, some obsessive compulsive issues, but my dad said the more you chase it, it's like a dog chasing its tail. And when you said that just now, kind of reminded me of that. But Dr. Walker, I have so many questions, but one of the things that is coming up over and over are these male escorts, and they listed a whole new slew
Yeah.
of escorts. And yesterday, and I don't want to get too graphic, Cassie talked about this is a trigger warning. I'm going to give everybody 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yesterday, Cassie in open court said that Sean Combs would basically get off on the escorts ejaculating on her, but then would bring her into a room and ask her, meaning Cassie, to smear the semen onto his chest. What is happening here? Some people have said, does Sean Combs have, some sort of homosexual inclinations? I don't know. Is this a sexual kink? Is this a psychological kink? Could it be that he's embarrassed that he's got some sort of attraction to men? What's happening?
It's hard to say without knowing Mr. Combs better. It certainly is unusual sex, but a lot of people have kinky sex and enjoy it. In this case, I think some of it was just a lot of acting. I think both Cassie and Mr. Combs were acting in these sex events and abusive sex events. And they hired actors to do it with them. I don't think it's about sex as much as it's about power and about control, because certainly can't be enjoyable sex.
Yeah. I would have to agree with you on that. One thing that really stuck out was a photo they showed in court today. By the way, they played some of the freak off video today, but it was only visible to the jurors on their computer screens individually. No one saw it. I don't even know if it was played on the lawyers' monitors. It was only facing the jurors, but they are watching some of this really disturbing video. One of the escorts' names, yesterday we heard one of them was, his nickname was the Punisher. Today we got the Islander. So they've got these like Hollywood-esque names. There's also an escort named Jonathan Otto that was mentioned today. And apparently, I don't know the whole backstory. He was a whole separate story, was arrested at a Trump hotel with a firearm. So this has like the makings of an absolute, just crazy story and crazy narrative. But Dr. Fontes, to you, there was an image that was shown in court today. And if you can picture just a door handle, Cassie put, because she was so afraid of Sean, number one, to block the door, but number two, as a weapon, she slid a butcher's knife in there to use it as kind of a barricade and for a weapon potentially.
Wow.
Does this mean, Dr. Fontes, that she definitely feared for her life, that she was in need of having a weapon? She didn't have a gun. She said she was afraid of guns, but she kept this knife for some period of time at the front door.
I have no doubt that she was afraid for her life. I saw that hotel footage and I was afraid for her life during that one beating, which was one of many. So I have absolutely no doubt that she was afraid for her life. Now, if she did not use the gun, she didn't use the knife, but I have worked as a expert witness on cases where domestic violence victims have used the knife because they just can't take it anymore. So she considered that her insurance policy, I guess, but she never used it. And she was victimized for a long time. It's kind of a false, in a way, it's really a false reassurance to have a knife like that, or even to have a gun, because the odds are that it will be used against you and you won't be able to use it against your abuser. But some people are trying to get whatever they possibly can to help them get through to the next day. I just have to keep underlining the terror that Mr. Combs, made her feel over time. I think we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, 100%. Back to the issue of jealousy, and then I promise a couple quick questions, and we'll get some final thoughts. But Dr. Walker, to you, Cassie Ventura, this is obviously not a typical day in the life of a typical American. She's invited suddenly to Prince's house in Los Angeles while he was still alive. Obviously the musician Prince, and he's going to perform in his basement for a small crowd. So she's invited, and she goes, and she describes it that she's, they're in the basement waiting for Prince to come out. She purposely hides it from Sean Combs. She's talking to a music producer, and in walks Sean Combs, and she catches a glimpse of him, but he doesn't see her. She doesn't think. So she runs out onto the front lawn, but he does see her, and he ends up going back to her house, and he ends up beating her up again because he was enraged that she would go to this without him and that she was talking to another man. Why is Sean Combs so jealous? I mean, is he inadequate from a manhood standpoint? What's happening here?
Well, again, it's hard to know, but for him specifically, but that's very typical behavior for batterers. The jealousy is outrageous, and usually it has very little basis to it. Just because she's going to see another man doesn't mean she's going to have sex with another man. And that's what they're afraid of. Deep down, part of these men who abuse women like that are afraid they're going to lose them because they don't feel competent enough to be men. And that's unfortunate. They do need lots of therapy.
I think he was probably equally outraged that she had dared to do something without his permission. So I think there was both the sexual jealousy, but I think it was also that he wanted to control her at all moments. We've heard other testimony that made that clear. And she had dared to eke out a little bit of freedom for herself. And that can be very threatening to someone whose goal it is to dominate their partner this way.
By the way, a lot of new names. This is Susan Malley coming to us from Scotland. I was in Edinburgh. What a beautiful place. The best gift you can give STS is tell a friend about the show. We are the best true crime show in all the world, with the best guests and an even better community. One of the probably the most somber, depressing moments, I'd say without a doubt today, was a moment, Dr. Walker, when Cassie Ventura is reliving all this. It was when she was asked, why did you file the lawsuit? And she said she was so broken and just she was so ashamed and felt so horrible. She didn't want to be on planet Earth anymore. And she told her husband that she wanted to walk into traffic. I think they're living in New York City. And she literally started to walk out to go into the middle of traffic. And he stopped her. Again, we asked her, are we surprised she's alive, that Diddy didn't kill her? But are you surprised that she's still here, that she didn't, actually follow through on taking her own life potentially because of what she was put through?
Well, it sounds like her husband was at least a support person for her at that moment. And, that happens to many people who are feeling so desperate that they have a moment where they're ready to really kill themselves. And if they have somebody to hold on to, they can be saved. And it sounds like that might well have been what happened in this case. I'm amazed, not just that she's alive, but that she didn't kill him. And I think in some ways, the lawsuit is the equivalent of what other battered women do when they really believe that there's nothing left to live for, and they end up killing the batterer. So I think Mr. Combs is lucky he's alive. He may not be so happy with the outcome of this lawsuit, but that's going on right now. But women who have been at the same point that Cassie was out have tried to protect themselves. I mean, it has been testified, as Dr. Fontes says she has, in these self-defense cases, that they finally reach a point where they know they're going to die. And so they have to find a way to stay alive. And she's lucky that she did.
This is all just incredibly depressing, but I think also incredibly important, because this type of trial can help people, because sadly there are so many people. Dr. Fontes, off the top of your head, or Dr. Walker, do we know how many women are in these coercive, controlled relationships? Do we have a percentage?
We have no real idea because so many women don't report it. But estimates suggest that every 15 to 18 minutes somebody's being abused.
And those are estimates about.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Those
Dr.
are
Fontes.
estimates. Yeah, I was going to say those are estimates about physical abuse. But it's important to note that there are so many elements of domestic abuse beyond the physical, and we're only beginning to recognize them as we recognize coercive control. And so we don't know how many people are coercively controlled. And sometimes people don't realize it themselves. They know that the relationship doesn't feel good. They feel trapped. They feel afraid. They're walking on eggshells. Maybe they think, if only he would punch me, then I would have a good reason to get out of this relationship, because they can't quite define what the problem is. But it's no way to live. It's a very hard way to live. Yeah.
And Dr. Fontes, there was an interesting question. If you had to go inside the mind of Sean Combs tonight, after he hears his testimony in front of his family about all the disgusting things that he did, what is he thinking about himself this evening, do you think?
I can't get into the head of Sean Combs. I really can't. I mean, what we've seen so far is that he thinks of himself. He thinks of what's good for Sean Combs. So he, you talked about him filming his family getting in and out of the van as they go to court. He may be doing that to monitor them. It's not for a family album. He may insist on knowing who's there every day and making sure that they show up. So I am guessing that he is feeling sorry for himself. He feels like everybody's turning on him. And he's hoping that with enough money thrown at enough lawyers, that he will get away from this. But he's probably outraged that Ms. Ventura, who he probably thinks of as having he gave so much to her, he's probably very, very angry at her and feels like she's doing him wrong, because he's thinking about himself alone. I mean, if he was really concerned with those kids, he might not have them come to court. Even if his lawyers want the kids in court, he could choose for them not to show up to protect them. His twins, I believe, are 18, right? They're 18.
Yeah,
19.
And
18.
The kids, I think they're 18, but they've all been they were in court today, and they're walking out. And I mean, I would never throw a question their way, and I haven't. But people are yelling questions at them. There's also, I got to say, there's, I don't want to say a big number, but there are plenty of Diddy supporters who think that he's being quote unquote railroaded. And I have no foibles or qualms about saying this. This guy deserves the worst. I mean, what he did, I believe Cassie Ventura completely. And I think he's a horrendous human being. I don't know that this guy can even be rehabilitated or helped through therapy. I just have no idea. There's one other thing here that got kind of a collective gasp in the courtroom today. She's asked by the government about these frequent UTIs or urinary tract infections. She said that she had them very frequently from the copious amounts of sex that she had to be involved in. She also had GI issues, gastrointestinal, from the drugs that she was taking. And she talked about sores on her tongue and in her mouth. And she was asked, what is this all like? And she described like this crazy burning sensation. And she would tell Sean Combs this during the freak offs, that it was so painful. And he said, keep going. And he just said, keep going. Dr. Walker, I mean, this is sadism, I think. This is bordering on sadism, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's torture. It's total torture. It's not unusual for somebody to have the UTIs, especially someone who's not getting any kind of medical care. It doesn't sound like she had appropriate medical care even during these kinds of sexual events. And it's very common, not just from drugs that she's taking, but gastrointestinal events are very common with sexual abuse survivors because our body systems all coordinate together. And so, the fact that her health has, I'm sure, been compromised, even though she's gotten out, she's going to have health problems. And hopefully she's getting good care now that she's pregnant. She has obviously a doctor who's doing examinations and hopefully giving her the kind of care that she needs. And certainly some of the sores in her mouth obviously may have come from forced oral sex as well. And she's doing it with all these partners. I mean, the more partners you have without using protection, the more likely you're going to have these kinds of physiological problems.
And she also talked about the fact that, I mean, it sounds like I'm making a joke and I'm not, but she also said the amount of baby oil that was going through her system and in her mouth was causing her to get sick. She talked again, just to fill in the last couple of holes and gaps here, and then we'll get final thoughts. She reiterated how Sean Combs would go from soaring and playful and happy to this monster of a human being. And one other thing here, Dr. Fontes, she talked about, we heard about obviously the freak offs, which you are opposed to calling them such, and I agree with you. But these forced sex sessions. But later, he tried to convince Cassie, and she talked about this in court today, about getting into the swingers lifestyle. And so he took her to these quote unquote lifestyle clubs in New York and Vegas. And her quote was, "I'm not into seeing a person that I'm in love with having sex with others." It's heartbreaking because, I think she really did love this person, or at least in her mind's eye, she did, because she was so young. Maybe she didn't fully understand what love is. I asked my mother in my book that I wrote about her, what is love? And my mom's 86. And she said, and she was married for 63 years. And my mom said, I have no idea what it is. I just know I had it with your father. So it's kind of hard to, and my mom really loved my dad, which makes it sad. But, well,
it's hard to understand that there was a positive side to Mr. Combs, and that's the part that she loved, not the awful side. These guys have two different personalities, at least according to the women. They talk about them as having these different ways of being, and when they love them, they love the positive person, and they believe that if only they can find the key to help them, the nasty, mean, horrible torture side's going to go away, and they'll be left with the real person who they think is the nice, warm, wonderful, loving person. The problem is that's not true. Both. Both kinds of behavior, both kinds of person, and it's the worse. It only gets worse. It doesn't get better.
Yeah, and Dr. Lenore Walker, I'm so glad you were actually able to technically connect finally. She wrote the book Battered Woman Syndrome, or Battered Spouse Syndrome. She's come up with the, basically espoused the theory. Dr. Walker, let's end it on this note with you. For those women and or men, that's why they call it battered spouse, but predominantly women. If you're out there and you're in a situation like Cassie Ventura right now, what is your advice to them?
Find a support system and get out. You don't deserve to live in violence, and the violence will rarely stop once it's started. And I include coercive control in when I talk about violence. Even though I know it doesn't always have physical abuse, it's still a way of living violence. And so I say every woman deserves to be violence free. And so, but you can't get out on your own. You've been in for a while. You've got to have a support system with you.
Very well said. And then we've got 2 for 1 here. Dr. Lisa Fontes. She is also a renowned expert in the area of coercive control. Dana C here has a comment. She remembered the good times too much. I think we all have a tendency to sort of look back in hindsight at the good predominantly and not all the ugliness. And maybe Cassie fell into that a little bit. But Dr. Fontes, I'm going to leave it totally open-ended again for you. You're the expert. Your final thoughts on what is a very disturbing case that is going from bad to worse. And unfortunately, tomorrow, we're going to see a woman who went through a lot of suffering get cross-examined by defense attorneys, and they're going to try to break her. And I got to tell you, there is an element of her that feels broken right now. I know she's working to repair herself, but you can see it in court. With all that said, your final thoughts on what we've seen and heard so far.
Well, I have to say I am concerned. I'm concerned, Joel, about you. You've talked about this made me pull out my hair and I couldn't stand this. I mean, you're going through a lot in sitting through this trial day after day. I'm concerned about your listeners and viewers who are tuned in. And all I can say is that I hope that people will look away when they need to. You don't have to stay tuned for every single moment, and get support. Contact your local domestic violence agency if you have concerns about your safety. I wrote a little piece today in psychologytoday.com about the language that we use to talk about sexual violence, particularly in regards to this case. And I'd love to come back, Joel, and I'm going to call you on saying the word freak off every time because I think it's important. It slides off the tongue super easily, but these are forced group sexual rapes. These are forced sexual assaults. One of my colleagues called it a sexual assault-a-thon. And, that's really what we're talking about here. But I'm glad these issues are coming to light because sexual violence in intimate relationships is very common.
Yeah, and I'm glad you offered because I'm going to take you and Dr. Wall. We're going to need you, both of you, through the remainder of this trial, which is going to be a long haul. Rachel D., who's in Tokyo, I read, having a good old time. I want to start a Joel therapy fund. I don't think Diddy has enough money for that. I don't think Diddy has enough money to support that fund. But I'll tell you what makes it a little more relaxing. Being in Manhattan with taxis honking at me, people yelling at me. I almost got hit by a city bike. The marshals at the courthouse and their New York accents. I don't know how I grew up and lived here basically my entire life. New York City is a crazy place. It's like you pay top dollar to be tortured and live in like little tiny spaces. And I was thinking it's sort of like an experiment in human psychology. Now, people are going to yell at me. New York City is the greatest city. There's great restaurants. There's great Broadway shows. But man, it's also super stressful. And I can't wait to get back home. Quick shout out again to my son. It's his 6th birthday today that I'm missing, but I was there for his party, and I'll be back this weekend. I'm going to go get him his soccer cleats. He made his soccer team, so I'm proud of him, and I'm grateful to Dr. Walker and Dr. Fontes. They'll be back on the show next week. I can guarantee you that because we need them back here. And we're also talking to Menendez brothers, and there's news with Alec Murdoch. We'll stay on top of it. Love you, America. I'm here at the trial through Friday afternoon. I'll bring you a Friday lunch live. I'll be there tomorrow for the cross exam. And then I'll be back at home base in Miami next week. So thank you all for being here. Thanks to the doctors. Thank you to Melba Pearson, Neama Rahmani, and we'll see you all tomorrow at our lunch live halfway through the day through testimony tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Night.